Hi, I'm Mariel. You're watching She Wants the Diction, and today I'm going to be talking about an oddly specific genre of books that I enjoy. Narratives about work or working. Now I know what you're thinking. That probably sounds like pretty freaking boring, right? Like, why would you want to read about work? Like, already so much of our lives are consumed by working. Like, why read a story about it? It seems kind of, or like a book about it. It seems kind of redundant, right? But this is something that I recently realized that I really like in books. It's not just stories about work, it's more specific than that, because I really like things where the narrative centers around work, but it's more about either critiquing an aspect of the job or just kind of like exposing, I guess, the dark underbelly of what it's really like to work that job, like the nitty-gritty inside scoop, like the first-hand account of what it's really like to do a particular job, which I just find really interesting because I feel like you can't fully understand a job until you've actually done it yourself. Like, you don't really know the ins and outs. So that's just something that I find really fascinating, is hearing it from the person firsthand, and just kind of hearing their insights and what they think doesn't make sense about the job, just critiques of it. And I feel like I really became interested in this, especially after working a retail job for several years. I worked at a convenience store as a clerk, and then also later an assistant manager. I definitely got a taste of how terrible retail was, because my anxiety got so bad to the point where I had to leave the job, find something different, basically, just because working with the public was so freaking stressful. If you've ever worked with the general public, then you know that how outrageous and unreasonable a lot of these people can be, and just a lot of things were said to me racially, and also there was some sexual harassment going on. People would hit on me and ask me out and make a lot of inappropriate comments about my body, or just to me. And I think it's always in all contexts inappropriate to ask out someone that's doing their job, for example, a waiter or a waitress, or just someone that's serving you, because they have to be nice to you, but also there's this dilemma where you need to be nice to them or you can lose your job or you won't get tips, but also you can't be too nice, or that's leading them on and then they get pissed. So it's this fine balance of being nice to them but not acquiescing to whatever they want. It's weird. So the first book that I want to talk about is called Rant, and I read this, I'd say, several years ago. This was before I even had a YouTube channel or anything like that. I believe he just kind of refers to himself as the waiter throughout it. It was originally anonymous, but then I think he might have came out and claimed the book or whatever, because he didn't want people to obviously know who he was if he was still working that job. But so in this book, he basically just talks about how a lot of waiters get addicted in big cities. They get addicted to the fast, large amounts of cash, because most of your money, is paid out in tips. And so they sort of get addicted to this lifestyle. And a lot of them, if they work at a bar or a place that serves alcohol, I guess they're sort of allowed to drink on the job. I don't know. It's they're technically not supposed to, but they can. I don't know, it's a weird thing. So they get kind of addicted to that lifestyle of waitressing or whatever, and then don't really try to do anything else with their lives. A lot of them become career waiters and waitresses rather than it being a temporary job. I liked it. I enjoyed the read, but I didn't think it was a great read. I didn't end up keeping my copy of the book. But that was probably one of the first stories that I read that kind of revolved around talking about a job and just kind of dishing on the inside aspects of it. The next book I want to talk about is Post Office by Charles Bukowski. And this is, as the title suggests, kind of his autobiographical account of, the years that he worked at a post office. And I feel like this book is very critical of the mindlessness of working at the post office, and sort of the stupid rules that they had based around working there, because I think there was some kind of sorting test that you had to be able to pass. And he kind of talks about how it was just dumb and sort of ridiculous. And I really relate to that, because I feel in a lot of jobs there are these rules that are kind of made by the higher ups, who sit in an office all day and don't actually understand what it's like to physically be on the ground working with these jobs. The rules that they tell you to adhere to don't always work in practicality. So I can really understand that frustration with the bureaucracy of wherever you're working. Just for an example, when I worked at the convenience store, they had this policy where if you didn't have the original receipt, then you could not like return the item. And so when I would have to explain to people why, even though, you know, their headphones or whatever they bought, you know, that didn't work, that I could not give them their cash back without the receipt, they would get super, super mad. And they'd basically just be like, you know, why not? Why can't you just look up the receipt? Or they would say like, I never got a receipt, which another one of the policies was that we had to make sure to give people their receipt every time. And like 99% of the time people would turn down their receipt no matter what the purchase was. Like, it didn't work in practicality. And a lot of times we ended up, you know, doing the refund anyway, even though we weren't supposed to, because we didn't want to deal with people screaming at us about needing to return things. So it's like we would kind of like low-key break that rule because it was better than being yelled at, you know, by customers. So a lot of things like that, a lot of little things like that, just that you kind of have to like feel out in the moment, but like it's not the rule. Like, that's not what you're supposed to be doing, but it's what you need to do to like get the customer off your back. So yeah, I feel like a lot of Bukowski's work in general, like his poetry and different things, really criticizes like the aspect of work that is like mindlessness and people like workplaces expecting you to like give your all but then treating you like shit. Like, I really enjoy those aspects of critiquing like, you know, capitalism and, you know, working under capitalism. So yeah, that's just something I really enjoy about his work. And kind of related to this is there's actually this YouTube series that I used to like to watch that's like Tales from Retail, which is done by this YouTuber, I think like Fantavision. And it's basically like him and his buddy just dishing about like terrible retail jobs that they had and just like stories about like outrageous customers and outrageous people that they had to deal with. And so I just really enjoy that because it's like, I don't know, just like very open and honest. And especially if you work retail, I feel like it can be kind of like therapeutic to just like listen to other people's stories about having to deal with crazy people, which is literally what you have to do every single day. Like, I feel like that's the main aspect of the job that is terrible, is like all the emotional labor that you have to do that you don't get paid for, which is just like people telling you that like their family member just died and like crying all over you, or just like breaking down at the register, or like telling you their whole life story. Like, you don't get paid enough to like deal with people's shit and people's baggage, but that's all you do all day. Or just like people taking out their emotions on you. I don't know, I can't even tell you how many times people got mad at me when I would ID them, when it's literally the law and I could have lost my job at any time for like not IDing people. And people would just get so mad to the point where like people are cussing you out. Like, you're literally like, I feel like 90% of retail is just taking people's shit. Like, just taking verbal abuse. And people will say, yeah, retail isn't a hard job, like cashiering isn't a hard job, whatever, because you just stand there, quote unquote. But it actually is. Like, emotionally, I feel like, and especially if you already are dealing with like mental health stuff, like it can be rough because you just deal with people treating you like the scum of the earth all day. Like, every single thing that's wrong in the store is like personally your fault, and they're there to like take it out on you. So yeah, you get to bear the brunt of like a lot of people's unhappiness. And so I really enjoyed like watching that series because it's just like nice to see other people of like a working age who like recognize that this job is like the shittiest job possible, just like talking about the crazy things that happen to them, and it kind of makes you feel less alone, I guess. So next book I want to talk about is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I believe I read this maybe about a year ago, and this is different in that I don't feel it was based off of her experiences working at a convenience store in Japan, but it's not really a book about negativity, like hating the job or anything like that. It's more about sort of finding her identity around this job and sort of like the ideas of like what success is, because she's like a 30-year-old who really enjoys working at this convenience store, and because she's not married or anything like that, society kind of looks down upon her. Like, she doesn't have a career, she hasn't done anything bigger with her life. She's happy working at this convenience store, and so everyone kind of thinks she's weird and is pressuring her to like move on with her life, but like she's really happy here. She feels safe there, she feels comfortable. And so I feel like that whole book is just challenging the idea of like, what is success? Is it looking good to other people and meeting other people's expectations, or is it your own personal happiness? And I really like this book because I feel like it conveys a lesson that I kind of like had to learn the hard way. I mean, people know this, like making more money does not equal happiness. And it's really like, what are your priorities? Like, is your priority working full time and having all this money, or is your priority having time to work on the things that are important to you, or doing something that, you know, where you have to interact with the public less. Because I literally switched jobs and I actually took a pay decrease to go from, you know, working in that convenience store to housekeeping. And I specifically did that knowing I would make less money because I wanted to work somewhere, you know, that was not full time. So I wanted to have, you know, more free time because I felt like I barely had time to do anything working full time because I was always so tired and exhausted and just mentally beaten down from working at that job. Like, I was having like stomach issues and just like my anxiety was at an all-time high, and I was miserable. Like, I did not want to go to work every day. I would like cry before my shifts. Like, I was literally just like the most miserable person ever working at that job. So I had to like, eventually I had to make a sacrifice, to make a choice to go somewhere and do something else that I thought maybe I would have to interact less with customers. So it's like the sacrifice of, I can make a little bit more money. And I also found out at that job that I don't like being in charge of people and telling people what to do, because 90% of the time people do not listen. And so it was just a really frustrating experience for me, because when I'm told something, like, I do it. I don't need to be told 50 times, but it's like, being a manager is kind of like constantly just like bothering people and checking on people and having to be responsible for other people's work. And I did not like that. So I just wanted to go back to being a grunt. Even if I had to sacrifice that little tiny extra bit of money that I might have been making, like it wasn't even really that much more. Like, if you're going to be poor, you're going to be poor. And I just didn't see the point in like working myself to death just for a few extra bucks. So yeah, I feel like that book in general just conveys that, like, if you're happy doing something, it shouldn't matter what anyone else thinks. Like, I had this idea where, like, oh, well, at least if I didn't go to school and I don't have a career and whatever, like all my other friends, and I didn't graduate, well, at least I can say, you know, like, I'm a manager of something. Like, it sounds good. It sounds important. Like, at least a little bit better than I'm a cook at McDonald's, you know what I mean? But in reality, like, I was not happy doing that. And just because outwardly it looked like I was doing at least decent, like, I was not happy with that. Like, I was miserable. So it's not about looking successful to other people or about what people will think of you, because I'm sure people probably, like, when you say you're a housekeeper, like, I think people probably look down on you and think that you're stupid. But, like, I know that's not the truth. So it has to be like what you think about yourself on the inside, not worrying about people's perception of you, because you can get kind of stuck in this trap of doing things that you think that you're supposed to do or that society tells you to do. So that's kind of a different angle on the work narrative that I really like. And the other book I want to talk about is I Work at a Public Library. This kind of definitely took a more humorous tone. It was kind of just like short encounters or excerpts that this woman had while working at a public library, which some of which are outrageous, but most of which are kind of just like funny. But again, that's a job where it's very like public facing, you're dealing with customers. So that was like a fun little book. I enjoyed it. I didn't keep it or anything. I ended up, you know, giving it away, but that's kind of another angle on the work thing, and just like little anecdotes and stuff that are amusing, but not like so dark that it's, you know, like depressing. And on the subject of, like, you know, people's perception of what your job is, I feel like in America there's such this idea that, like, you are whatever your job is. Like, I feel like that's one of the questions people ask you is, like, what do you do for a living? Like, what do you do? And it's there's kind of this tendency to identify, like, yourself with whatever your job is. Like, I don't say I work in housekeeping, I say I am a housekeeper. You know, like, that becomes my identity. But, like, I don't know, like, what you do for a living is just like what you do to make money. It shouldn't be the fundamental aspect of your identity, in my opinion. And there's also like this culture of like workaholism. Like, it's a good thing to be so busy and so tired, and like we really like glorify that in our culture. And there's like this culture of, if you're not doing something constantly, if you're not hustling constantly, if you don't have a side hustle, then like you're not doing enough. But the reality is that like working full time is already like hard. Like, that's already a difficult thing, and we shouldn't be glorifying like working overtime and all these things where like our life is our job. Like, our lives are actually like meant to enjoy. But in a capitalist society, like, it's hard to do that when you're constantly, you know, you're not being paid enough, you're not making a living wage, or, you know, you're constantly having to like hustle in order to get by or do extra work. So I really disagree and dislike that culture, because I think that taking breaks and vacations and all that stuff should be more built in, because it's healthy to take breaks and have off time and off days and things like that. But yeah, there's this cultural message that you need to keep pushing and constantly working, and you can never stop until you like physically drop dead. And I just don't agree with that. And I think one important book to mention here obviously is going to be Fight Club, which, well, it's not specifically about the job that the main character works. I think it is a critique of office jobs and jobs that are just kind of like mindless, and sort of the idea that you are your job. So yeah, well, that's not a narrative that's specifically critiquing a specific job. I feel like it is critiquing that idea in society of, you know, you are what you do. And I feel like also there's this idea that like you have to do your passion for a living, which for a long time I kind of subscribed to that. I'm like, if I'm not doing something that I'm 100% passionate about, like, what's the point? It's like, it has to be monetized, you know what I'm saying? So like, pursuing art as a hobby isn't seen as highly as, like, if you can make a living as a photographer, that's not seen as the same as if you take photos for a hobby on the side and you just really enjoy doing it. It's like you have to live your passion. You have to like do your passion for money. And for a long time I like had that mentality. And now I'm not so sure. I'm like, maybe the things I love should be a side passion, because if they become a job, then, and I have to do them, a requirement, I might not enjoy them anymore. Maybe they'll be ruined. And that's kind of also the idea of just doing a menial job where I'm not that important. I don't have to be in charge of people. It's just a place that I go to make money. And then as soon as I'm not there, like, I'm not there. Like, I don't have to care. I feel like managers have all these like extra expectations where if someone calls in sick, then you have to go in. Like, your life becomes that job. You have to be constantly available. And so if you're just a person that works somewhere, like, you have the ability to just call in. And yeah, you still have to like have reasons and stuff, but you don't have to be so invested in the workplace, because, you know, if worse comes to worse, you can just get hired somewhere else doing the same type of things. Like, menial jobs, people are like replaceable, you know what I mean? Like, I hate that about it, but you can just find somewhere else. Like, you don't have to be as attached to it and as attached to the workplace. So I like that about it. So I'm like, I'll just take a step back. When you're just a peon, you have the luxury of not caring as much, but the managers are the one that have to be there 24/7, caring about the job, doing all this extra stuff like orders, inventory, whatever. And I didn't want to have to deal with all the extra responsibilities. Like, I just wanted to have to do as little as possible. And even if that meant that I made less, as long as I was working with less people, like, I didn't care. It was worth it to me to not have to deal with the extra stress, because it got to a certain point where it was too much. So, and one book that I did want to read that's kind of been on my radar is Made by Stephanie Land, and it's subtitled Hard Work, Low Pay, and a Mother's Will to Survive. Now, obviously I'm interested in this not only because I'm working like an adjacent job, which is sort of like housekeeping, which I think being a maid is kind of similar. It's just in someone's home, so it's more personal. But it's on my radar because I think Obama mentioned it, and I've also just been seeing it around a lot. But I think this is going to be more of sort of like a nonfiction, more of a more serious tone and more of like a straightforward tone, but it's still a narrative about a specific job that's undervalued in our society. Like, a lot of the service professions, I think, are undervalued, and it really confuses me how people get mistreated in these jobs, because I feel like a lot of people who do the mistreatment have never been in a position where they've had to work a job like that. Like, they've never not been in a position of privilege or power to where they've had to work one of those degrading jobs. So they treat those people like shit. And also in Fight Club, there's this idea that these people are actually the backbone of society. Like, if there were no service workers, like, you wouldn't be able to get fast food. You'd have no convenience. Like, your office wouldn't be clean when you came in the morning. Like sort of the idea that these people are more important than you think they are. As you can tell, I really like that aspect of Fight Club. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. I don't know when I'm going to get around to it, but I just kind of wanted to do a video on this very specific sort of subgenre of books that revolves around like jobs and work and exploring different aspects of that. So if you guys have read any of these, let me know. I would love to discuss. And also, if you have any like recommendations for things like this that you think I might enjoy, leave those in the comments, or tell me what your oddly specific genre of books that you enjoy is. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.